All right, so again, we are talking about layout. Hopefully, if you saw the example we did on Tuesday, all right, that gave you some idea on how do you get things started and what you need to do with different kind of layout. Even though your layout might sound challenging, or you may have a very complicated design, but this is my point. You can always, almost always use vertical, horizontal layout, which are rows and columns, to arrange them. You can always expand it to control the height and the width without hard coding the dimensions, especially using the weight. And then if you ever need a margin or padding, you need alignment, and container will be there to help you. Okay, so these are the 4 things so far I found that can do most of my design. I'm pretty sure you can also do the same thing. Don't need to spend too much extra time to look at other sophisticated design and layout yet. Okay, unless you're very, very clear, oh, I need to make this photo like gallery app that showed all the images and something like that. Grid view is a good fit. But right now, just try to stick with these ones so that you don't feel overwhelmed by all the details. All right. Also, we talk about you should follow the top-down design. Okay, any kind of a design like what we did last time, just think about the high level with the portions. Let's create those first with the weight, and then you fill in every single part with exactly the same approach. Always start with a row or column, and then split the weight. Finally, work on the margin, polish with the little size and weight stuff. All right, so that's how you do it. All right, so we can show you more examples if you want, but before that, let's also talk another important thing, which is the navigation bars. Okay, so a lot of apps today, especially from I think the iOS app, use this more. They use bottom navigation bars. I'm pretty sure a lot of you probably also want to use that kind of design. Okay, so let's actually go back to the example here. So if you go to Flutter, bottom navigation bar, so we are talking about this kind of design. Okay, so this one here. So bottom navigation bar became popular in iOS apps because if you've been using Android phone, you know there is a back button, right? It's very convenient. But Apple doesn't provide you this back button. And then a lot of the back button in the early iPhone app was at the top left corner. And some people are okay with that. Some people find it very difficult because you have to move really far with your thumb finger to press that back button. Later on, you start to see a lot of mobile apps, especially Apple iOS app, they use a bottom navigation bar because it's closer to your thumb. And then you can easily press that. You can easily switch the screens. And also it gives you a very good view on how your apps are organized. Okay, people can directly see what are the options. But if you only have one screen and then you use different buttons to navigate to different screens, then some of the users, they don't even know some of the things exist. And then they don't even know how to trigger it, right? So there are a lot of advantages with this kind of view, all right? There are also some other kind of navigations. For example, in Android, sometimes you have this hamburger button, right, at the top corner. It's not as common as before. And then you press that, it gives you a kind of drawer navigation bar, or you can swipe. But I think it's not as good as this one because this is more obvious. This is clear. If you don't know the swipe, you don't even know there is a bar menu on the side. Right? So, but eventually it's all up to you, but there's approaches that are similar. I just want to show you how this thing works. Okay, so it's very straightforward. So let me come back to our code. So let me just back it up. Okay, so I'm gonna do, this one was the Tinder app. So I'm gonna back it up. So I'm gonna still use this first one here. All right, so let me just delete everything. All right, so start from scratch. Let me run this one very quick. All right, so if you're interested in navigation bar, This example gave you the full code. It's pretty easy to understand. I just want to go through this with you together to highlight some of the important things, okay? So to work on this, you need to provide, let's actually build this menu option first, okay? If you want to use this kind of a bottom navigation bar with items, what you need to do is go to your UI part. As you can see, if you use the scaffold, which we talk is a typical material design type of layout, it allows you to build an F bar if you want. It allows you to build a body, which is the main part for the screen. It also allows you to do the bottom and navigation bar. You can also have the floating button, from the sample app. That's also supported by scaffold. Okay. So again, I haven't looked at exactly what scaffold is, but my understanding is just a recommended UI design pattern provided by Google. It gave you this kind of facilities. You can do the bar if you want, bottom navigation, floating button if you want, right? So let's follow this. You gotta provide this bottom navigation bar at the bottom. Okay, let me first type something here to make sure this thing works. Right. So this is our app, empty, and then I refresh it. So we got a little test here in the top. Okay, let me center this one. It doesn't look very good, so I'm gonna do center. All right, so Flutter center is there. And then if you want to align those, there are different ways. For this one, you can do the main axis alignment to the center. All right, so that goes to the center, okay? All right, so that's how the body works. Right. Yeah, I don't like that one, So same time, you can do this attribute called bottom navigation bar. As you can see, this one is a part of the scaffold UI widget. Okay, if you do this one, you gotta create a class. I think it's called a bottom navigation bar. Right, so that's what the example showed us. All right, so basically, remember what you're doing here is just equivalent to this one. Okay, some example will show you new, some don't show it. It's equivalent. Okay, in Flutter you can just ignore new, but you have to understand this one just create an instance. All right, so for here you got to provide a few things, but the most important thing first is the items. The items means the actual navigation manual item. Okay, so if we do items, it requires a list of bottom navigation bar item. All right, so let's see if there are any kind of a, yeah, so they have auto completion. Always use that one because otherwise you don't know what to put. Wait, why didn't it show up? All right, I don't know why. Never mind, let's just see this one here. All right, so you can have a few items. You can add a constant or not, doesn't matter. The example gave you this one, just tell you, okay, this list here is constant, you can't change it anymore. It's a good practice, but using it or doesn't matter. Nobody's gonna come here to touch and change this one here. All right, so this is a list, okay? And then every item will be an instance of a bottom navigation bar item, right? So let's use this one here. So if you do this, okay, that's one. And then these ones, you need to provide some attributes. You need to provide a title. That's probably the most important one. So let's say the first title is, you got to provide tags, okay? The first one, let's say is, for example, home. Maybe you have to provide icon also. And then let's do this, icons. Try this. All right, so it looks like you must provide the icon and title together. You can't miss them. All right, so if you do this, refresh the screen, because something is wrong. All right, so let's see what happens. Looks like you probably have to provide more items, okay? At least two. So let's do this one here. Copy it. One is home, one is account. Yeah. Looks like Flutter do give you a lot of this icon library. That's pretty helpful. Okay, so let's do this one here. Yeah, so you basically have to provide two items and list. Okay, you can do more. And then this one will be social example. Whatever. All right, so you got 3 bottom navigation bar. You can have 4, but probably you don't want to go more than 4 because will be very difficult for you to control. And also make sure app too complicated. So it's up to you, but 3 or 4, okay? So right now you can see this layout shows up here. When you click, nothing happens because we haven't programmed it. But this is step 1. You got to build this item to know how many menu items you want. And then the next thing is just basically program kind of event. If you press each of the items, then what happens? And the logic will be very straightforward. If I click on this button, I'm going to switch to that screen. If I click on this one, I will switch to a different screen. Right? So you will need to build different screens. So let's see what this example gives you. So looks like you got also record which item you are currently selecting, which is called current index. You also need to provide the select item color. Okay, what it looks like, how you want to highlight that if you select it. And also you want to provide this on-time method, which means on click, right? So let's do this one by one. So current index, so let's put all of those. Current index, okay, you need a index variable. So selected index. Remember the underscore means private, right? So you have to define this one in the beginning. So in this class here, let's define selected index. Right? So Dart, you don't need to provide private, but you use underscore to indicate this is private. All right, and then you also need to provide selected item color. I think that's not really required. That's not very too much, but then you do need to provide this on tap event, right? So on tap means that if you click on that, what happens, right? So you could just write a method right here to do it. Oh, it actually needs a specific method here, I think. Oh yeah, you need to provide this. There's a parameter. Okay, so do this one here. So the on tap requires you to provide a specific method signature, which has a input parameter, which is the index. So which one you're tapping. So that's why it requires you to do this one. But let's not use this approach. Let's follow an example. So you got to provide this one here called on tap, maybe bottom navigation bar, just to be clear. Okay, you need to provide this kind of event method. So if you have this, then you can put that one over here, and then you don't have to write it here. Yep. So you can, in Dart, you can just send this whole method name here so that it will know how to call it. All right, that's how it works. So basically, if you click on the tab, click on the item, it's going to run this function. The function will know which one you're clicking. All right. Based on that, then you can switch the screens. All right. So let's see how they do the switching the screen. Okay. So these are all very straightforward. And then they use private. It's a good practice. Let's do that. So let's mark this one as private. All right. Now to switch the different screen, okay. So as you can see, what we did here is they gave you a list of widgets here to choose. Right. And then when you changing the selection, all you need to do is to change this variable, the selected item, the index, and then that's just a number. So looks like they're going to switch to one of these 3, but then if you look at the code here, this one here shows how it works. The body here right now is not a concrete screen UI design, they actually use this item from the list. Okay, so anyway, let's actually do this one by one. So what they did here is they have a list, right? Let's just follow that one. Okay, they have a list of widget options. All right, so you can provide a different one. So I'm going to give a text here called a, I'll just do a screen 1, 2, and 3. Okay, you create a list of widgets to choose and private. So when you are, before we do this one, okay, for the body, we got to replace that. So right now it says just a concrete hard-coded text, but we want to use the widget option list, and then we choose one of those, and then you can do element add. So just to say which one you want to use, and then the element add basically means the, I don't know if you can do this one here in Dart. I don't know if that's going to work, but it means the same thing. Yeah, it looks like you can't do this kind of index approach, so you have to call the method dot element add. Okay, but that's what they mean. Okay, just find out that item from the list. And then this one is something we define here, select index. Okay, this one always indicate which one to use, right? So your variable here, I think it will be initialized as 0, but you can put this one or not, doesn't matter. It's always going to give you 0. So let's try this one right now. Okay, so let me recap this. I just changed the body from a hard-coded text into one of the widgets from the list. The widget will be decided by the index, and then the index is specified here, starting from 0. So if 0, it's going to show you screen 1. All right, so let me refresh the screen. So this is screen 1 because by default it goes to the first widget you have in the list. Right now, when I click on this one, nothing happens, okay, because we haven't programmed it. So what we want to do now is, all right, so we are going to change the selected index, because if you, before we do that, let me show you this, okay. So this index here passing to this parameter in this function will record which one you are clicking. So you will know. Let me test it. I'm going to print this index, and I'll show you, okay. So on screen, I'm going to use the start approach, okay, has been chosen. All right, something like this. So let me refresh. When I go back, this time when I click on this, as you can see, it actually prints out that index, right? So this is 0, 1, and 2. So because every time when I click, it's going to call this method, and it will pass you which one you're clicking. So that's the purpose of its parameter. So with that, I can then change selected index equal to index. Because hopefully, if I change this one, then it's going to update this guy here. It will show a different widget. That's how it's supposed to work, right? So if I refresh, go back. All right, I go back here, click. So the event got triggered, but this thing here has not been updated, even though I did change this index here. All right, so it doesn't work yet. So let's look at the sample. So what we're missing is, if you look at this method here, all right. So there is this thing called a set state, okay? We did not do that, so let's try that. So I'm gonna put this set state. I'm gonna move this line here, inside here, refresh it again, go back, go home, account, social. That's how it works, okay? So I really want to highlight this part here. Some of you probably already learned, okay? You probably already seen a lot of this set state, okay? So this is a very important feature from Flutter. I think React.js probably use the same thing, same idea, all right? So they use this state concept to really simplify how the UI should be refreshed and synchronized with the data. Because most of the mobile app, the screen is not a fixed content. For example, if your app just started, you launch a splash screen with a logo, that screen never going to be changed. Okay, no matter how you run it, what kind of data you're loading, that's just a screen that doesn't depend on any of the data. I think in Flutter it's called stateless. That's what is called stateless. Most of screens is going to depend on the kind of data you provided. If you have this name, I'm going to show this name. If you have a different name, then the label or text has to be different, right? So if that's the case, you always need to handle how you reflect the data on your actual UI. And also, more importantly, if some of the data got updated, how do you update your UI? And you want to make sure the update happens in real time and instantly, right? So in some of the development, for example, Android, right? You actually have to program all these details. You need to have an explicit method to say, okay, this one got to be updated, how to update it, and then when do you call that? So all of this should be programmed together. But I think Flutter or some of the newer frameworks like React, they really simplify this approach. That's why this framework got very popular. So they use this kind of a state concept, right? So the state is very easy to understand. Like this is one of a state because this is a instant variable belong to this class. So that's why it has this is a state. But then if you look at it more, because this class extends with this state class, that means this class has some kind of a state. Okay. That's why all of the screens actually extend this one, because if you ever need to record some of the data, some of the state, having this one is going to tell Flutter, okay, this class is going to use this kind of a state management feature. All right, so whatever you define here becomes a state. All right, now if you have a state, the really good thing is the state can be connected with your UI. So this is how we connect it, because this one here is not just a variable that records index. That controls how the UI here will be displayed, because if this is 0, we're going to show the first one. If this one is 1, we're going to show the second one. So it's connect and linked with UI. All right. Now, if that's the case, if you ever want this change to be instantly reflected in the UI, you must do this set state. Okay. When you don't do this, let me show you. When you don't do this one, and this one happens, it does change the value. Okay, so we can prove that. So if we go here, I do a print. So value, select index. So if you don't set state, okay, if we refresh and then go back to here to try to click, and then this one is 0, the value got to change to 0. This one is 1, it's 1. So it all got updated, but it doesn't change the UI because you didn't really tell the UI part that something got updated and then you need to take care of it. But by wrapping this one with a set state, all right, the moment you change the value, it automatically sends out a notification or send out an event to all the UIs who rely on this state to tell the UI, I have some changes. Please go ahead to update your UI accordingly. So when you have this one, that's how you can bring this kind of updates. All right. So this is about how the UI data work together. All right. And I really want to tell you that if this is the first kind of a UI application you've ever done, you might feel this is very straightforward, pretty easy to understand, very easy to use. This is a very modern way of handling UI applications and updating the data from UI, which is, I think, so far what I think the easiest way to update it. If you ever work in Android, or you work with, you probably did Java Swing, or some other older kind of web development, if you just use HTML, JavaScript, I'm not talking about AngularJS or React.js. All these updates, you can all do it. It takes much more effort for you to manage all of this. But now, you just instantly connect everything. Okay, you define your data here. You inject that into your UI here. Whenever you want to update it, just call set state. It's going to send out that notification. So set state is without it, you can still change your state. But with this, you will send out the notifications. Okay. Now, if you remember in our sample app from Flutter, they have this click thing. Okay, so I don't have it anymore. If you think about that one, there's a counter to say, oh, if you click on the, let me actually repeat it. So if you have this one here, remember that counter equal to 0, and then you got a button somewhere. I can change this one into a button, for example. Let's change this one into a button, a flat button, right? On press, let's just do a method very quickly. Okay, so if you press a button, and then we are going to, so we got to provide a text to show, right? Oh, we can do, it's a little bit tricky. Okay, I'm going to create a different screen for this one. Okay, I'll hold on for this one for now. Okay, so let's bring back that example. I just want to understand that set state thing. But let's do this, because right now this thing whole thing already works. Okay, you see the index controls the screen you want, but you're just switching this little widget here. And then what you might need to do is actually to switch a totally different screen, because you won't be able to just put everything here into the list. It's going to be too much. A better way is to just create a different screen. For example, I'm going to go back and then modify this. Oh, actually, I can just use this Tinder app. Okay, so the Tinder app here, this is a complete application, but let's create this. I'm going to just copy paste. I will call it screen Tinder. And then I don't need this run anymore. I don't need this application anymore. I just need this page. I'll call it Tinder page. Okay, let's do some updates here. Tinder page state. All right, so that one should be doing the same thing here. So this is one of the screens we have. So, but be careful, like this screen, which is called a Tinder page, as you can see, the parent class is called Stateful Widget. Now, what is Stateful Widget? That means this widget has some kind of state. But then if you go and then look at the definition of a Stateful Widget, it also has a parent, which is called a widget. Now, if you see this one, you should realize, wow, I can actually put this one back here, because this is the list of widgets. So from here, you should understand in Flutter, widget is the top level class for the UI component. Any kind of UI thing is a widget. Okay, so I can then do this. Let me replace this one. I will call this one as a Tinder page. Give a title. I don't know if we need a title, but just in case. All right, so I can replace that one and then put it here. So remember, this thing here go to a different file. Okay, so but it should work. So let's refresh it. Go back here. If I click on the middle button here, let's see. Maybe I have to restart because I created this new screen. So that hot load doesn't work. Okay, that's another thing I want to bring your attention. This thing here is convenient, but if you make some dramatic change, I can't tell you exactly what kind of change will not be picked up. Like this is one case because I just created a new file, a new page, it was not picked up. Okay, so for some reason, so let's we'll rerun it and then let's try this again. All right, things are not working. A lot of layout stuff messed up in this new part here. I don't know why. Let's try see if we can fix it. So, which part? Some of the constraints. Okay. So scarfold. Maybe we can't use this one again. That's my guess. Okay. So let me try to remove this. See if that's going to help us. Okay. So this one here. All right, so I'm going to remove the scarfold because I feel that's kind of a duplicated. All right, so it's not. All right, so somewhere here, I think it's kind of a conflict with the other one. All right, so let me just comment it all to make something work first, and then we'll actually debug that. All right, so I'm going to comment on all of this. And then if I refresh it again, Looks like this time it works, okay? But you can't see anything. I would just add. Let's bring a picture. Okay, so let's do this one here. All right, so here is a new screen and another screen. But what I want to show you is your widget could be a separate file. That's probably what you would do for your app. Okay. Every screen should have its own file, and then that's how you switch. But I can't tell you why this one doesn't work. We gotta dig into a little bit because probably some of this UI changes conflicts with here because you are just rendering that whole thing inside the previous screen, the UI. Okay, so that probably will take some extra time for the debug, but you should know that you can put the widget in your navigation, for your navigation, bottom navigation bar into different file for different screen purposes. Okay, so here, let me show you that one more example, the text here. Remember that in sample app, it said that you have clicked on the button and then certain number of times, counter. All right, so and then you can then create this variable called counter, int. All right, and then we can bring another button. So button, flat button. And this one has on press. All right, so you could then just increase the counter. I don't know how to bring a text. Maybe I just put a text like this. Can't remember that. So child. All right. So go back here. There's a little button here, flat button. Okay, I click on this one, and then this thing here was not updated. All right. So because this counter here was used, even though it's used, but that even though I increased here, but I didn't notify the UI change it. Okay. So to notify it, you gotta do set state. Now you do it. It's gonna update it. Remember that example from floating button? Okay, so this one is very simple, but you got to understand how it works. And you might be wondering, oh, if that's the case, why do you need to bother to do this one all the time? Why don't we always set state? Since it's a state, why don't we always set it? Why? Why do you have to exploit this one? Because once you define this one here in the class, it is a part of a state. It's always a state. Why do you have to decide whether to set to 12 or not? This is not an uncommon situation. A lot of frameworks will give you something similar. You give you this option for you to choose. But obviously, this is a very useful option. Why don't we give you this by default, Sam? Well, right. So, yeah, but my question is, because that we're not sitting there waiting for counter. Right. Yes. Yeah. No. My question, Sam, is, this is useful because it's notify the UI and tell them this things to be being updated. But why do they allow you or want you to actually put this method explicitly to do that, rather than just by default always do set state? Yeah. So that's also kind of related. Okay, but partially correct. The main reason is you should know this kind of a notification is expensive. Okay, yeah, of course, when you have a sense in the background, you don't need that, and you don't have to show it in the UI. But at the same time, you should know this line here is going to cause the system to do a lot of work. It has to tell a lot of UI widget or something. We got to update it. Make sure your data got updated and refresh it. That little process takes resource. So you, as a developer, have to decide, do you really need it? Okay. Otherwise, it's not going to be a very good performance. If you have just one text, that's easy, but if you have a lot of a complicated UI, you can't afford having the notification going on every single time. It's a good question. I actually don't know the difference, but my guess is they probably will do the update per function call. So I think you were right. So rather than if you do like individual set state, they probably would notify multiple times. That's my guess. Okay. Yeah. So we can probably look at documentation to clarify that. Okay. That was a very great point. So if possible, we probably want to put all the changes in one method rather than in different ones. Okay. So, but again, that's just our guess. In the beginning, you don't need to worry too much about its performance, but all this performance issue becomes really critical when you start to work in a real company for a real product, especially when you do things in Amazon, Google, Facebook. Their logic, their code change normally is not that too difficult because a lot of things are already been done, but they have really high requirements on the performance. Every single change you push, they have a lot of automated tests to tell you, for example, you work on some kind of page, front-end page, and they will actually test how much time the page will be loaded, and then you'll be surprised how sophisticated they do the test. It's not like they set up a virtual machine, they run the test there, oh, this one takes 100 milliseconds. They actually load the page, okay, across the whole world and using different providers. For example, Amazon, they do the test, they don't use AWS because their internet are connected very fast. They buy some Heroku or something called a line node. They use some of these other providers to go to load their pages and then give you the feedback. And then they set up a servers all over the country and they tell you the feedback, how fast it's being loaded. So let's say the baseline, most of the time we see this page load within 100 milliseconds. After your change, the test shows it's 150 milliseconds. Your change cannot be accepted. You got to go back to figure out why that happens. And that's always the difficult part when you work in a big company, but also that's the most valuable part, the things you can learn most. It's about scalability. It's about how to maintain the large number of users. But for this project right now, don't worry too much. Okay, in the beginning, let's make things work first. Startup, in the beginning, you won't have a lot of users. So scalability will be a good problem to worry if you have. But if you never have users, then you won't have that scalability issue. So don't worry too much in the beginning. All right, any questions? All right, hopefully I give you enough motivation to actually take some action. Okay, not just work on the project, but also work on your applications. Okay, it's the same for everyone. When you feel competitive, your peers also feel the same way. But at the end, it's about how much you can do consistently. Okay, so everyone will have the fair chance. Next Thursday, okay, come to the class.